Tonight, on First at 9 this Friday the 28th of February 2025. Wanted. Mathura Magistrates Court orders the arrest of former IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon and 7 other former officials of the Colombo Crime Division. Arrests to be made over the Valigama shooting in 2023. Positive territory. IMF Executive Board conducting third review for Sri Lanka's extended fund facility today, reveals President Anura Dissanayake in Parliament. Asserts that the government anticipates a positive outcome. Further pledges to address threats imposed on national security. Startling revelations. 1.2 billion rupees in public funds misappropriated by the former government for election-related purposes, reveals COPE. Further calls for action against SLBFE officials for abetting processes similar to human trafficking. Global ties. Sri Lanka must bolster cooperation with India in the fields of energy, trade and investment, says expert. Further says the island nation should be tactful in managing its relationship with China.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lanka Kiren Perata. Obe Vishwasi Dino Sensorain, then Lagamati Pharmacy in Labagata Hacker.
Kanta Parisankara Gatot? Ape Parisan.
ඉතින් මොකටද නිකන් නාගන්නේ? ස්වදේශී කොහොඹ lemon grass අද කාලෙට ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ම විසඳුම.
This is Ada Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Ada Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Singha joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world, brought to you by the only Sri Lanka media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms, recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now in your top story tonight, the Mathura Magistrates Court ordered the arrest of 8 former officers of the Colombo Crime Division, including former IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon, and further ordered that their names be captioned as suspects in the pending legal matter filed over the fatal Valigama shooting which took place on the 31st of December 2023. The relevant order was issued subsequent to the conclusion of the magistrate's inquest into the death of a police officer attached to the Colombo Crime Division during the fatal shooting.
On the 31st of December 2023, a group of police officers attached to the Colombo Crime Division were deployed to Mathura Valigama on a special assignment to apprehend close associates of underworld Don Nadun Chintaka, alias Harakkata. The police officers, clad in civil attire, claimed they were fired upon, with shots being fired from within the W15 hotel premises in Valigama. As the onslaught of bullets threatened the lives of the officers involved, the police promptly returned fire. Thereafter, a mobile patrol vehicle of the Valigama police arrived at the scene and opened fire at the van carrying the officers of the Colombo Crime Division, mistaking them for criminals. Subsequently, the van transporting police personnel of the Colombo Crime Division and the mobile patrol vehicle left the scene, while 2 police officers who were inside the van had already sustained injuries. 1 police officer succumbed to his injuries upon being admitted to hospital for treatment. The deceased officer was identified as Upul Chaminda Kumara, a 47-year-old sergeant attached to the Colombo Crime Division. The preliminary inquest into the death of the police officer was conducted at the Mathura Magistrates Court and its findings were announced yesterday. Accordingly, the Mathura Magistrates Court ordered the arrest of 8 former officers of the Colombo Crime Division, including former IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon, and to name them as suspects in the shooting incident.
The Committee of Public Enterprises yesterday revealed that a total of 1.25 billion rupees in public funds were misappropriated and spent on election-related purposes by the former regime. Meanwhile, Chairman of COPE, Dr. Nishantha Samaravira called for a disciplinary investigation into officials of the Sri Lanka Foreign Employment Bureau for issuing an unlawful circular permitting domestic workers to engage in employment in the United Arab Emirates and Oman on visit visa with no employment contract in place.
A circular permitting licensed employment agencies to transfer domestic workers to the United Arab Emirates and Oman on visit visa with no employment contract was signed on the 20th of March 2023 by the then chairman of the Foreign Employment Bureau. The circular contained a stipulation, however, that those who expect employment opportunities as domestic workers must make a payment of $100 to the Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment. The Committee of Public Enterprises convened to discuss discussed the circular in question and its stipulations at length yesterday.
කාර්යාංශය සමග රැකියා ගිවිසුමකුත් නැතුව විසිට් වීසා වලින් කාර්යාංශයේ ලියාපදිංචි වීමක් නැතුව ඩොලර් 100ක කාර්යාංශයට හැන්ඩලින් ෆී එකක් විදියට ගෙවලා ගෘහ සේවිකාවන් රට යවන්න බලපත්‍රලාභී ඒජන්සි වලට අවසර දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒකේ සමින්ද ජයසේකර තමයි ඇක්ටින් චෙයාමන් විදියට තමයි අත්සන් කරලා තියෙන්නේ. පනත අභිබවලා මෙවැනි සභාපති චක්‍රයකයන් නිකුත් කරන්න ඔබතුමාට බලය ආවේ කොහෙන්ද?
මම හිතන්නේ මේකට උත්තරයක් දෙන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි මේ ඇප්‍රූවල් අංශයේ වාර DGM තුමාට මොකද?
නෑ ඔබතුමාගේ මහන්නේ ඔබතුමා හිතලා ගහන චක්‍රයකයක්ද නැත්නම් බෝඩ් එකේ අනුමැතියකින් ඔබතුමාට පවරන කාර්යයක්ද මොකද්ද මේක?
මට බෝඩ් එකේ අනුමැතියක් තිබ්බද කියන එක මතක නෑ මේකට. ඒක චෙක් කරලා බලන්න ඕනේ.
අනුමැතිය අංශේ DGM කවුද?
ඒ අවස්ථාවේ මම හිටියේ.
ඔයාට කවුද මේ ඕඩර් එක දුන්නේ?
මේ ඇත්තටම මේක පසුබිම කිව්වොත් මේ කොරෝනා වලින් පස්සේ
දැන් පසුබිම නෙමෙයි. විස්තර එපා. ඔයාට කවුද මේ චක්‍රලේඛය මෙහෙම ග්‍රාෆ් කරන්න කියලා කිව්වේ?
මීට පෙර මෙම ක්‍රියාදාමයේ ක්‍රියාත්මක වුණා 2020
අනේ මහත්තයෝ
එපා විස්තර එපා. ඔබතුමාගේ තනි කැමැත්තටද මේක කරේ?
එය කලින් තිබුණු සර්කුලයක්ම දික් කිරීමක් පමණයි.
සර්කියුලර් එක තියෙනවද පරණ එක?
මේකේ චක්‍රයක රිෆර් කරලා නැහැ. මේ ක්‍රමවේදය කියලා කියන්නේ මේක බරපතල ක්‍රමවේදයක් නේ. රාජ්‍යයට සම්බන්ධ ආයතනයක් මේක මේ හියුමන් ට්‍රැෆිකින් වලට උදව් කිරීමක් වගේනේ.
ඉතින් වැඩේ කියන්නේ ජාවාරම එළිය යනවා. පස්සේ ජාවාරම ඔයගොල්ලෝ කරන්න ගන්නවා.
ජාවාරම් කිරීමක් නෙමෙයි.
දැන් විසිට් වීසා වලින් පිටරට වලට මිනිස්සු අරන් ගිහලා පන්නන එක ජාවාරම් කාර්යය කරන වැඩක්.
අපි දකුණු කොරියාවට යවන්නේ විසිට් වීසා වලින්. විසිට් වීසා කියන එක එච්චර අදාළ දෙයක් නෙමෙයි. රැකියාවයි අපිට වැදගත් වෙන සහ ගිවිසුම.
6290ක් ඔය යටතේ වියවලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට අප්ලෝඩ් කරලා තියෙන්නේ 4300යි. 7990ක් තවමත් අප්ලෝඩ් වෙලා නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ ජොබ් එක හම්බෙලා නැහැ කියන්නේ. ඊළඟට 742ක් මිසින් පැනලා මේ චක්‍රයක ගැහුවේ හිතුමතේට without board approval. අපි කෝප් කමිටුවේ විදියට නිර්දේශයක් දෙනවා. පනත නැවත සලකා බලන්න ඕන. ඊළඟට මිනිස් ජාවාරමකට ඉඩ සැලසපු කතාවක් තමයි මේක ඇතුලේ තියෙන්නේ. තීන්දුව తీරන ගතපු නිලධාරීන්ට නිසි විනය පරීක්ෂණයක් කරලා නිශ්චිත දඬුවම් පමුණවන්න.
Malfeasance in Global Fair 2022, a job exhibition organized under the previous regime by the Ministry of Labour and Foreign Employment, were discussed extensively at the COPE hearing yesterday. The committee particularly discussed fraudulent activity pertaining to the procurement of stalls at the event.
2022 ඔක්තෝබර් 15 16 කියන දවස් දෙකේ ගාල්ල සමනල ක්‍රීඩාංගණයේදී ජොබ් පෙයා එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒකට එක ආයතනයකින් වෙළඳ කුටියක් කුලී පදනම මත රුපියල් 1,70,000කට කුටි 30ක් මිලදී ගන්නවා. ඊට පස්සේ 2023 ඊළඟ අවුරුද්දේ ජූලි 15 16 යාපනයේදී මේ ජොබ් පෙයා එක තියෙනවා. ඒකට අර ආයතනයෙන්ම කුටියක් මිලදී ගන්නවා ලක්ෂ 5ක් වෙන්න. ඒතර ඒක සම්බන්ධව තමයි ඔඩිට් ක්වයරිය තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට වෙනස ගත්තම 3,30,000ක් එක ප්‍රදර්ශන කුටියක් වෙනුවෙන් වැඩිපුර වියදම් කරලා තියෙනවා. මේ විදිහේ දෙයක් කරන්න. ප්‍රසම්පාදන ක්‍රියාවලියක් සිද්ධ වුණාද?
කාර්යාංශයෙන් සිද්ධ වුණේ. මේ සියලු ප්‍රසම්පාදන ආයතනයේ තෝරා ගැනීම, ගණන් හිලව් තීරණය කිරීම අමාත්‍යාංශයෙන් තමයි සියල්ල කෙරුවේ.
අමාත්‍යාංශයෙන්ද මේ මුදල් ගෙව්වේ කාර්යාංශයෙන්.
කාර්යාංශය.
මේක මුදල් අනුමත කරේ කවුද එතකොට?
රේකියා අමාත්‍යාංශයේ වකට හිටපු ලේකම්තුමා විසින් මේ ආයතනයට සෙස්සාර මුදල් මගින් ගෙවීම කරන්න කියලා අවස්ථා කිහිපයකදීම අපිට ඩිරෙක්ටිව් දීලා තියෙනවා ලියුම් වලින්. ඒ ලියුම් අපි ළඟ තියෙනවා.
ඒතර මේක කලින් කරන්න හිටියේ ගාල්ල සංගමිත්තා ඉස්කෝලේනේ. ඒතර සංගමිත්තා පාසලේ කරන්න යන වැඩේ වෙනස් වෙලා ඊට පස්සේ මේක කොහොමද සමනල ක්‍රීඩා පිටියට එන්නේ? තීන්දුව ගත්තේ.
ඒක රේකියා අමාත්‍යාංශයේ ලේකම්තුමා ඇතුළු අමාත්‍යාංශ නිලධාරීන්ගෙන් තමයි ඒ සම්බන්ධව විමසන්න වෙන්නේ.
කියන්නේ විමල වීරද? අමාත්‍යාංශ ලේකම් විමල වීර.
ඔව්.
ගාල්ලේ තියෙන එකට 1,70,000යි ඒ වැඩේම යාපනය කරනකොට 5,00,000යි. එකකට 3,30,000ක් වැඩි වෙනවා. එක හට් එකකට. මේ වගේ හට් ගහනවා කියද්ද 25ක් ගහනවා. බැලුමට පේනවා මේකේ තියෙන වංචාව.
ඒ වෙනකොට රට බංකොලොත්තු කියලා නම් කරපු වෙලාවේ ඒ වංචා කරපු හැටි.
දැන් මෙතන මේ මිලියන 542ක් 2024 අවුරුද්දේ ස්ටෝල්ස් වලට විතරයිනේ.
ඔව්.
ටෝටල් වියදම කොච්චර විතරද?
ටෝටල් වියදම තියෙනවා බිලියන 1.25.
යුරෝ එකේ සල්ලිද මේ බිලියන 1.2?
ඔව් සර්. මේ හැමදේම සිදු කිරීමට කැබිනට් ඇප්‍රූවල් අපිට ලැබිලා තියෙනවා.
කැබිනට් පේපරේ දාලා තියෙන කවුද?
මේක දාන්නේ මනුෂ්‍ය නායකකාරය.
මනුෂ්‍ය නායකකාරය.
එතකොට දැන් ඔබතුමන්ලා කරන මේ කරුණු පැහැදිලි කිරීම අනුව අපිට පෙනී යන්නේ කෝටි 120ක් පහුගිය ජනාධිපතිවරණය වෙනුවෙන් රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහගේ පිටරට ගිහිපු මිනිස්සු වෙනුවෙන් වෙන් කරපු සල්ලි මේකට වේදම් කරා කියන එක තමයි අපිට මේ පෙනී යන්නේ.
පිරිපුන් ජීවිතයකට ඔබ සමගින් පෙරට Union Assurance. චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙන් මනාපේ සිංහ TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Don't waste time. Start your degree with pending A-level results this February with our partner universities. Call ACBT on 0117 699 499.
Less sugar, same great taste. From Melbourne.
Now in other news, a fundamental rights petition filed by the Electricity and Renewable Energy Consumers Association was called before the Supreme Court today. Attorney-at-law Ravindranath Dabare, who appeared for the petitioners, submitted to court that the Ceylon Electricity Board is compelled to pay annual interests on the deposits collected from customers when providing electricity connections under Section 28(2) of the CEB Act. The state-owned electricity board, who filed a motion on the 30th of January 2024, stated that it had decided to pay the 11.67% annual interest rate approved by the Central Bank for Sri Lanka, rather of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, to domestic customers and other customers from the 1st of January 2023 to the 31st of December 2023, which had received the approval of the Public Utilities Commission. After considering the facts presented in court, the three-member Supreme Court judge bench ordered the CEB to act as agreed in the motion and pay the annual interests accordingly. Visiting senior fellow at ODI Global in the United Kingdom and former director of research at the Asian Development Bank Institute in Tokyo, Dr. Ganeshan Vigdaraja says Sri Lanka should focus on further advancing cooperation with India in the fields of energy, trade, investment and business-to-business relations. Joining our current affairs program at Hyde Park with Indivari Amuwatta, he emphasized that the bilateral relationship between Sri Lanka and India has the potential to become a model for broader South Asian region. Commenting on China, Dr. Vigdaraja is of the view that Sri Lanka should strategically manage its relationship with the world's second largest economy to its advantage.
We are looking at development with our closest neighbour India, who came into Sri Lanka's aid during the crisis, and there is China, Sri Lanka's long-standing development partner. How do you think a country is Sri Lanka, with such strategic location, geopolitical importance, is going to manage all this?
We've got to learn that Sri Lanka is in South Asia, and therefore the India-Sri Lanka relationship becomes absolutely critical. During the crisis, India came to our aid. With that comes a price, but it need not be a price that Sri Lanka is then subservient to India. This is where the visit of Anurukumara Dissanayaka to Delhi was very significant. We got a chance to rebuild the relationship. There are at least 4 things we should be thinking about doing. Sri Lanka has to look to an economic relationship with the 5 South Indian states. Business-to-business ties between the different chambers in those South Indian states and the Sri Lankan chambers. We need to think about an oil pipeline between India and Sri Lanka, because they get it at a cheap price globally, also from Russia. Now that doesn't stop us getting oil by ship from anywhere else in the world. And then we need to think about an energy transmission line to India, and we have linked to the Indian grid. We can get gas if there's an LNG terminal. We're not dependent on one source, but we shore up our energy security. New Delhi and Colombo piloting a regional production-linked incentive scheme to encourage Indian investors to come to Sri Lanka to invest. For instance, in the auto parts industry, and certainly in food processing. We really have to rather rapidly sign a trade deal with India. And we need to think very strategically on setting up a trade office, which was there under the economic transformational bill, and I think that function has now moved to the Ministry of Trade. We have to get our skates moving on setting up a negotiating team and starting that discussion. India-Sri Lanka as a bilateral relationship economically can actually be a model for South Asian cooperation. On our side, we have to look at our tariff policy a little bit to make sure that some sectors which have a lot of SMEs and poverty issues we protect. We also have an anti-dumping law which is very strong, and most importantly we raise the competitiveness of our industry so we can actually export to India, invest in India, send our workers to work in India. On China, we need to look at how we use Chinese funding and expertise much more prudently. The Chinese were very generous in saying to us that you tell us where you want the projects and you put them. China has not invested here. They have given us loans at 6% often in places where we wanted it, but they have not invested. Now that tells you something about how they see us. And during the crisis, they did not come with the same kind of money that India came with to bail us out. So we need to think very strategically on how we manage that relationship to our advantage.
Now in other news, President Anura Dissanayaka directed the district secretaries to allocate 1,400 billion rupees in recurrent expenditure for the implementation of productive projects at the grassroots level over the next 8 months. During discussion with the district secretaries at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday, President Dissanayake emphasized that Sri Lanka's economic growth could be elevated by 3% to 4% by ensuring the development of the rural economy. Moreover, the President pointed out that there is a prevailing negative perception of the public sector and that inefficiency within the government services has contributed to this situation. Addressing 30,000 job vacancies identified within the public sector, the President revealed plans to recruit officials for the relevant positions, which is expected to complete the mid-level staffing of the public service. Additionally, the district secretaries raised issues specific to their districts, which were brought to the President's attention, and extensive discussions were held on possible solutions and proposals.
Fast-track your career from O-levels with eSoft.
ඩයබටිසෝල් සීනි වලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
කැලණි වයර් කිසි ගින්නක් නැහැ.
කිසි ගින්නක් නැහැ. කැලණි Fire Shield Wire.
Malibu chocolate cream, inguru and lemon puff. Less sugar, same great taste. From Malibu.
Responsibility to look after our health.
The best nutritional supplement for diabetic patients with no added sugar. Maliban Vitagen. Stay healthy for a good reason.
Now, the magistrate's inquest into the death of notorious underworld don Sanjeeva Kumara Samaratne alias Ganemula Sanjeeva continued for a second day today. Meanwhile, a group of attorneys who provided legal counsel to Ganemula Sanjeeva requested the court to probe the fatal shooting, further calling for an investigation into prison officers and STF officials who were tasked with providing security to Ganemula Sanjeeva.
On the 19th of February, underworld figure Sanjeeva Kumara Samaratne alias Ganemula Sanjeeva was gunned down at the Halsdorf Magistrates Court No. 5. Ganemula Sanjeeva's post-mortem examination was conducted by the Colombo Judicial Medical Officer on the day following his murder. Thereafter, the magistrate's inquest into Ganemula Sanjeeva's death was conducted by the Colombo Chief Magistrate Tanuja Lakmali on the 24th of February. Evidence was provided at the inquest by Police Constable Heva Patiranage Tharanga, the officer assigned to protect the magistrate presiding over Halsdorf Magistrates Court No. 5, Priyantha Pushpakumara, an attorney who was present at Court No. 5 during the incident, and Anuru Vijay Siri, a police constable attached to the Paliagoda Crimes Division. The magistrate's inquest to the murder of Ganemula Sanjeeva continued for a second day at the Colombo Chief Magistrates Court today. Accordingly, evidence was presented by Dilrukshi Samaratne, the older sister of deceased Ganemula Sanjeeva. Dilrukshi submitted to court that Sanjeeva was held at the Busa prison prior to the incident and added that she was not aware of Sanjeeva being transported to the Halsdorf court complex for a hearing on the 19th. Sanjeeva's sister further revealed in court that she received a phone call between 10:30 and 11:30 a.m. Through the call, Dilrukshi was informed of her brother's sudden death. She also claims that she immediately called attorney-at-law Lakshman Pereira to authenticate reports of her brother's passing. Officials of the Colombo Crimes Division in charge of investigating the murder of Ganemula Sanjeeva submitted to court the post-mortem report along with another report containing further information. Upon considering the reports, Colombo Chief Magistrate Tanuja Lakmali declared her verdict based on the evidence led before court. Meanwhile, a group of attorneys who provided legal counsel to Ganemula Sanjeeva requested the court to probe the fatal shooting. They further called for an investigation into prison officers and STF officials who were tasked with providing security to Ganemula Sanjeeva. Considering facts presented, the Colombo Chief Magistrate granted the orders requested by investigating authorities and ordered the case to be taken up on the 7th of March.
Welcome back. Now, the chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, DJAS Rajakhanuna, announced today that the 3% discount claimed by fuel distributors will be abolished from tomorrow onwards, with a new cost-reflective equation being introduced tomorrow in that regard. Off the back of the CPETCO's decision, the Ceylon Petroleum Dealers Association announced today that it will withdraw from ordering further stocks. However, according to the latest update, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation has issued a statement confirming that there will be no revision to fuel prices for the month of March, and further stated that there will be no shortage of fuel since retailers have not confirmed any stoppage of fuel orders.
මේගොල්ලොන්ට 3%ක වට්ටමක් හිමි වෙලා තිබුණා. නමුත්
they were entitled to a 3% discount. However, the current payment structure violates the circular issued on the 10th of March 2022. According to the circular, if the price of diesel crosses 121 rupees, 3% will be payable accordingly. For petrol, the price threshold applicable is 162 rupees. According to those rates, the discount per litre of petrol should be 3 rupees and 63 cents. For diesel, the discount applicable should be 4 rupees and 86 cents. However, if we do the required calculations for last month at the 3% rate, they are entitled to 8 rupees and 52 cents for a litre of diesel. Per litre of 92 octane petrol, they will be entitled to 9 rupees and 14 cents. They are entitled to higher discounts for other types of fuel. When fuel prices shot up to historic highs in 2022, discounts hovered around 14 to 15 rupees per litre according to the 3% rate. However, according to the 2022 circular, they are entitled to a 3% discount only if the price of diesel crosses 121 rupees. Therefore, they are entitled to 3 rupees and 63 cents. This is actually the fault of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. If our system was running accordingly, then distributors would not receive a discount exceeding 3 rupees and 63 cents. Since distributors were adamant about receiving this discount, they went to court and secured an injunction in their favour. The order ensured that they received the discount uninterrupted. Subsequently, they lost the case in court. Then, when they were about to implement the proper calculation, they filed an appeal with the Court of Appeal. In the Court of Appeal, they secured another interim injunction. Through the interim injunction, they secured the 14 to 15 rupee discounts. Meanwhile, an audit was conducted. The audit clearly outlines that 35.49 billion rupees of public funds were unlawfully appropriated to fuel distributors. They recommended its immediate rectification. A suggestion was made to abolish the 3% discount rate and formulate a new equation that reflects the cost and revenues of distributors. We informed the Secretary to the Ministry in this regard. Subsequently, the Secretary to the Ministry set up a committee to look into the matter. We are trying to implement the decision taken up by that committee from tomorrow onwards.
මත්වංශ ලේකම්වරයා කමිටුවක් පත් කරලා ඒ කමිටුව විසින් ගැනපු තීරණය තමයි මේ ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න යන්නේ හෙට ඉඳගෙන.
Subsequent to this decision, the Petroleum Dealers Association announced that it will withdraw from ordering fuel with effect from midnight today. The association has stated that it would only distribute existing fuel stocks and will not order new stocks.
Central Bank officials of Sri Lanka and India discussed possibilities and potentials of enhancing the use of local currencies of both countries in cross-border transactions. These discussions were held during a roundtable titled INR-LKR Trade Settlements Strengthening Bilateral Economic Ties, organized in Colombo recently by the High Commission of India. The event saw the participation of High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Santosh Jha, Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, and Chief General Manager of the Reserve Bank of India, Dr. Aditya Gaya. During the roundtable, Dr. Gaya highlighted key policies of the Reserve Bank of India which permit investments in Indian rupees in Sri Lanka and elaborated on the Reserve Bank's recent amendments to the Foreign Exchange Management Act aimed at enhancing the use of local currencies in cross-border transactions. Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe meanwhile underscored the importance of the mechanism and encouraged banks to engage with policymakers and central banks in both countries on streamlining the mechanism. Welcome back. Now, President Anura Dissanayake today informed Parliament that the Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund is currently reviewing the staff-level agreement on the third review under Sri Lanka's extended fund facility. Speaking during the second day of the committee stage debate on the 2025 appropriation bill, the head of state assured that the government is confident of a positive outcome from the review and the disbursement of the $333 million fourth tranche of the EFF program.
With regard to the investigation into the central bank bond scam, Chief Government Whip Nalinda Jayatissa requested Ranil Wickremesinghe to bring Arjuna Mahendran back to Sri Lanka. You might as well ask Arjuna Mahendran himself to return. Why aren't you negotiating with the government of Singapore? You promised to take swift action regarding the Easter Sunday attacks. However, the father of the two main accused was one of your nationalist candidates. During our government, we gave police officers officers an allowance that amounted to 40% of their salary. However, in this budget, you've reduced 18% of that 40% allowance. There are 1,400 known underworld operators. The president vowed to eliminate the underworld. However, he also promised to deal with paddy mill owners, but instead raised rice prices by 10 rupees. The Anti-Corruption Secretariat was under the good governance regime which you represented. I was the director of that secretariat, and out of the 1,200 documents submitted, 500 documents were handed over to the Bribery Commission, the Financial Crimes Investigation Division and the Criminal Investigation Department for investigation purposes. Former Presidents Ranil Wickremesinghe and Maithripala Sirisena struck deals and halted the advancement of those investigations. However, we have recommenced those investigations now, and we have decided to create a different salary structure for the police department. This will be presented through the next budget in Parliament. The incumbent president delivered the budget speech. It starts off from the economic crisis in 2022, stops and resumes after the 21st of September last year. According to the speech, no one governed the country during the period between 2022 and 2024. When former President Ranil Wickremesinghe handed over the country, the US dollar rate was at 305 rupees. The current value of the US dollar is 300 rupees. We are pleased. The official reserves of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka stood at $6 billion when former President Ranil Wickremesinghe left office. However, the official reserves have now dropped to $5.7 billion. The US dollar that is valued at 300 rupees will increase up to 307 rupees on the 10th of April this year. It will probably increase up to 310 rupees later on. The official reserves, which are at $5.7 billion, will definitely decrease by $2 billion within 2 months. Those statistics are wrong. According to the latest statistics by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, foreign reserves were at $6.12 billion on the 31st of December last year. As at the end of January, reserves were at $6.065 billion US dollars. Reserves remain at the same level at the end of February as well. National security of the country is like the head of a body. The government is still new. The President, Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Deputy Minister, the commanders of the Tri-Forces, the Defence Secretary are members of the Defence Council. All of them are first-timers and complete novices to the Council. This has never happened before. If national security is the head of the body, the intelligence services are the sensory inputs. Considering the Intelligence Review meeting, the Defence Secretary, the Secretary to the Minister of Public Security, the commanders of the Tri-Forces, the Acting IGP, Chief of National Intelligence, DIG in charge of the CID are all novices to this body as well. They do not have any experience. The Director of Military Intelligence, Brigadier Deeptha Aryasena, was part of the Infantry Mechanical Engineer Regiment. He does not have an understanding of intelligence. He used to share social media posts of the JVP during his service, and disciplinary action was taken against him. I request you to be more concerned about the security of this country.
ආරක්ෂක කවුන්සිලේ අධ්‍යක්ෂකම් අඩු බවක් මහ මිත්‍ර දිලිත් ජයවීර මහත්තයා කිව්වා. ප්‍රාදේශීය සභාවකවත් හිටපු මහත්තයෙක් මේක කිව්වා නම් අපිට මේක බාර ගන්න තිබුණා.
Me and my friend, the Deputy Minister, attended the same university. Even though I was not a member of a Pradeshia Sabha, he knows what my capabilities are. Around 150 individuals who are not part of a Pradeshia Sabha are representing the government in Parliament. So I request you to consider me to be the same as them. A massive public discourse was generated regarding an impending economic crisis in March. Many individuals have formulated plots over how to overthrow the government during this purported crisis in March. However, we submitted the report relating to the third review of the IMF. We expect positive developments in the future. We are now heading towards a stable economy. However, many people criticized that vehicle imports might cause the dollar exchange rate to rise. Approximately $117 million of LCs have been opened. Therefore, the value of a US dollar is decreasing now. You have all been thinking about grabbing power through an economic crisis. However, that era has ended. In Sri Lanka's history, governments have collapsed due to crises within the ruling party. However, this this government will never experience internal friction. Some are trying to put me on a pedestal and crush our other parliamentarians. If you ever think about creating a downfall of this government through an internal contradiction, it will not happen. You also think that there is a great threat to national security and it will collapse this government. It will not happen either. If you think about ousting the government through public outrage, it will not be a success. All the new claims are regarding the purported threats against national security and the lives of citizens. Some claim that since this government has failed to provide protection, it must be changed. A single ordinary citizen has not been harmed from these incidents. However, through this underworld conflict, a fear has arisen in society and we accept that. We have recognized two methods on how threats can be created against the national security. Racism and extremism can be one method and we will not let those rise again. The Prevention of Terrorism Act was also discussed here and it will be revoked. That is our stance. However, if there is a threat to our national security from organized criminal groups, trends regarding racism and extremism, and if we cannot use regular laws, we will need new laws to address it. For this matter, we will revoke the Prevention of Terrorism Act through a new legal framework, and we have created a committee for that purpose and it is examining the matter. Who are these people crying crocodile tears about the rise of criminal gangs? Who gave protection for them and who developed them? It is the political authority. The National People's Power government will fight against those underworld gangs and will eliminate them from this country. I will tell you this with responsibility. This government has not provided protection or instructions to any criminal gang. We examined some recent events. The murder that happened in Middania, the murder in the Halfstop Court Complex, the murder in Kotahena, the murder in Uswatakeyawa and the shooting in Minuangoda. The organized criminal groups have activated all at once. We have identified two locations where they can be activated. It is Batticaloa and the Northern Province. The reason is that some individuals have created armed groups that can be controlled by them. So we believe that there is a planned conspiracy behind the sudden activation of these groups. However, we have a reasonable suspicion that these groups are controlled by one figure. We have received some reports regarding this matter and we will conduct investigations.
That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.